These are the 10 worst MCU movies of all time according to their Rotten Tomatoes score. According to Rotten Tomatoes, the 10th worst MCU movie ever made is Avengers Age of Ultron with a 76%. But let me quickly explain how the critic score actually works on Rotten Tomatoes because a lot of people get it completely wrong. It's not like critics come together and say, oh, we're giving this movie a 76 out of 100 or a 7 out of 10 or anything. No, they ask a certain amount of critics, like this movie, 376 critics reviewed it. And out of those 376 reviews, 76% of them gave the movie just a positive score, which means anything between a 6 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. Like if it's a positive score, it doesn't differentiate how positive the review is. Which really shows how positive the MCU was for so long that their 10th worst movie, 76% of critics still thought it was a good, enjoyable film. I do agree Avengers Age of Ultron is weaker, but I would still have it probably around the 15th best MCU movie, not towards the bottom. Number 9 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness with a 74%, again, meaning 74% of critics gave it a positive review. I do not have it this low in my MCU ranking, but I kind of see where the critics are coming from. Again, these are people that mostly are not huge fans of the MCU, so they might have been confused about things like Wanda if they didn't watch WandaVision, and a bunch of the cameos probably didn't do anything for them. Plus, Sam Raimi's style in general is just not for everybody. And number 9 is Iron Man 2, where 72% of critics gave it a positive score. Honestly, I'm a little surprised it's that high. This is one of my least favorite MCU movies, even though Iron Man is one of my, if not my favorite MCU character. I just feel like this movie is such a colossal downgrade from the first Iron Man and kind of a complete mess. There's way too much going on with the two different villains in this movie. I think they should have focused on either just Justin Hammer or Whiplash and it would have been 10 times better. In 7th place is where the Rotten Tomatoes scores start to take a little bit of a dive. Now we're below 70% with The Incredible Hulk. I honestly agree. This is towards the bottom of my MCU ranking too. I just rewatched it before Captain America Brave New World. It's not like a terrible movie in any way, shape, or form, but there's just really nothing great about this. Like I think Edward Norton could have been great as a character, but the movie's really not doing a lot of favors for him. And number 6, I can't believe this movie has this many critics giving it a positive review, is Thor the Dark World. This would pretty easily be in my bottom 3 of the MCU with a very negative score. In my opinion, this commits the biggest crime that any movie can do. It's simply a boring film. They have Malekith, who could be interesting, but he is a terrible villain. This is a complete mess. At number 5 is Thor Love and Thunder with a 63% of the critics giving it a positive review, which kind of makes sense. I feel like this probably scraped by with a lot of like 6 or 7 out of 10s. I don't think too many people are giving this rave reviews, but this being lower than The Dark World is insane to me. Both are not good movies, but I'd much rather rewatch this film than The Dark World. There are elements of this movie that make it enjoyable enough. Like I think the core storyline between Jane and her cancer actually works really well. It just gets undermined by a lot of jokes. Same thing with Gore. He's a great villain. Every scene he's in is incredible, and then they just undermine it with jokes. That's the big theme of this movie, and the jokes aren't funny, which is the big mistake. I do really hope we get a 5th Thor movie kind of redeeming him. I don't think they need to go completely super serious like people are saying. Like Ragnarok was super funny and that still worked. We just need to find that balance again for the 5th Thor entry. The 4th worst MCU movie according to Rotten Tomatoes, still with a fresh score of 62%, is The Marvels. This is another movie that's definitely skating by with like a lot of 6 and 7 out of 10s. I feel like there's barely any 10 out of 10 reviews for this. I personally have the movie towards the bottom of my ranking too. I don't think it's terrible. Again, I don't think really any MCU films outside of like 1 or 2 are absolutely unwatchable. It just really is nothing special. Again, like the chemistry between these 3 is a lot of fun and the action and directing is also really solid. Other than that though, there's really nothing to grab onto here. It is also one of the most boring and forgettable villains of all time, which is a shame because they actually gave her one of the most interesting motivations out of any of the MCU villains, but they forgot to add any other element to her character that makes you care about her. And number 3 is where I think this list gets completely wild, is because Captain America Brave New World has a 50% score, counting it as rotten, meaning pretty much the critics are split on this movie. Half of them said it's a good movie, again, between a 6 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, and the other half gave it anywhere between a 1 to 5 out of 10. I'm higher on this movie than a lot of people. I personally gave it a 7 out of 10, which makes me sound like I absolutely love this movie because I just feel like I have to defend it because the amount of hate this film is getting online is insane to me. Yes, the movie does definitely have some problems. You can definitely see some of the rewrites in the script, but I think it tells a pretty solid story overall. I think Red Hulk, how they handled him was cool. They just built up the hype way too much in the trailers for him. Like the fact that more critics watched this movie and thought, oh, this is just a straight up bad film, than the amount of critics that watched like The Marvels, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor the Dark World and thought those were bad movies is just kind of mind blowing to me. I don't understand it. At number 2, I heavily agree with this score. The Eternals, 47% of critics gave it a positive review. This movie was so painful to get through. We introduced so many brand new characters, and all of them are terribly uninteresting because we don't get enough time to develop any of them or the relationships between them. It should have been a TV show instead. It looks pretty, but that's pretty much it. And I gotta say, I agree with the critics on their number 1 pick for the worst MCU movie. It's not my personal worst, but it's definitely like in my bottom 3. I don't remember exactly where I have it placed. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. 46% of critics gave this a positive review. Outside of the stuff with Kang and Janet, I almost think nothing in this movie works. It's not as funny as the first 2 Ant-Man movies. It's really missing the X-Cons, and the entire quantum realm is a complete mess. It looks so ugly to look at. Let me know in the comments below which of these critics score was most surprising to you, and tap above me to check out my complete MCU ranking. It was after Deadpool and Wolverine, so Brave New World's not on there, but still the rest of the MCU movies are all included.